is watching.
So I'm going to share something with you that happened to me as a child. At the time I was around 10, 11, and my sister would have been 8 or 9. Long story short, our cousins, who we saw every weekend, had purchased a life-sized knitted clown from an op shop or thrift store. I know what you are thinking. Why on earth would anyone buy one of those? My thoughts exactly. Anyway, from the moment this clown arrived at their place, weird things started to happen. I'll give you a couple of examples. They would place the clown in their bedroom, and when they woke up, it would be sitting on the couch or in the kitchen, and this went on for some time. One night, a few months after they got the clown, myself and my sister had a sleepover at our cousin's place. By this point, we were all super scared of the clown and didn't want it to be anywhere near us. So for whatever reason, we locked it in the outdoor dog kennels that they had at their place. Sure enough, when we woke up the next morning, it was inside the house, sitting on the couch. Although all our parents were skeptical, our uncle decided it would be best just to get rid of the clown for good. He put the clown on the back of his ute, ready to take a load of rubbish to the tip that afternoon. This is the part I really can't explain. Myself, my sister, and our 2 cousins were out the back of their place, riding on the mini 4-wheelers they had, and we stopped to have a break and chat. Then, out of literally nowhere, we see the clown running like it's human through the long grass, maybe 50 meters away from us. Terrified was an understatement. After 10 seconds, it had disappeared into the grass. We ran to our parents and tried to explain what we saw, when everyone realized the clown wasn't on the back of our uncle's ute anymore. No one could understand, especially us 4 kids after seeing what we saw. That was the last time we ever saw the clown. We went back to the long grass where we saw it, but nothing was there. We talk about it still to this day, and honestly, still can't believe it. This story sounds like a load of BS, I know. But we know what we saw that day, and it's something I'll never get out of my head. I suppose the underlying question is, where did the clown go? And what had caused this to happen? For some context, my grandparents adopted me. I lived there until I was 18. I'm 22 now. I had some pretty scary experiences, as did my other family members and any friends who stayed over. Strange noises, things moving on their own, whispers, etc. Those things didn't bother me much, as I never scared easily. But my grandmother did, and still does, have a collection of dolls that always creeped me out. One in particular made me particularly uncomfortable. It used to sit on my grandmother's bedroom dresser, staring directly down the center of her bed. It was an old porcelain doll with a pale face, really thick, curly hair, and a woven hat. Nothing especially scary about it. I just hated it for some reason. I moved out of their house right when I turned 18 and took all of my belongings with me. My bed, my dresses, everything. The room was completely bare. A few months after I moved, they mentioned that they were redoing my old bedroom and a couple of other rooms in the house. I moved across the state, so I hadn't been there or seen the room since the day I moved out. One random night, I had a dream about my grandmother's doll. I walked into their house at night, straight up to my old bedroom. I opened the door to discover a couch on the left, a small bedside table with a lamp, and the doll on a stand right next to it, as well as a new bed on the right, up against the wall. It was painted a dark blue, but the whole room felt eerily grey. I started slowly stepping towards it when I noticed the doll slowly turning its head towards me. I turned around and started to bolt towards the door, which then slammed shut, and I woke up. I get nightmares frequently, so I just brushed it off and went back to sleep. I figured it was no big deal, just like any other nightmare. About a month or so later, I went to visit my grandparents. I had a box of things I wanted to get from my old bedroom, so I headed up. When I opened my bedroom door, I shit you not, it was set up exactly like it was in my dream. Couch, nightstand, doll, bed. Mind you, I had never seen this room. Everything was completely different from the way I had left it. Nobody ever described it to me. I had no idea how it looked and couldn't have possibly known that this was the current setup, and it scared the shit out of me. I felt my heart drop. I was so terrified. I shut the door and went back downstairs, and that was that. Once a year, my parents go on a vacation together somewhere in the US, usually to the Bahamas or to Florida. They leave me in charge of the house with my dog and like for me to check on my nana who lives in our basement. Normal, right? There's another important bit of background information. My dad takes part in this weird golfing competition with his friends, where if someone wins a certain amount of holes, they get to take home this creepy doll as a sort of trophy. I don't get why, but I guess it's just some running gag. Well, my dad won the competition, and he brought it home before he left. I am not at all scared of dolls. In fact, before he left, I slept with it beside me as a joke. It was basically an old baby doll with a missing eye and a brown dress. I don't know the origin of it, and didn't really bother to ask. November rolls around, and my parents leave for their vacation. Everything starts normal for a little while, but then things start to get weird. Because I'm the stereotypical little brother, I put the doll on my sister's bed and took a picture to send it to her as a joke. She is in university. She hates dolls, so I leave the room with the doll still in there and head to my room just to send the photo and move on with my life. A few minutes later, I hear a massive bang. I jump, startled, and go look out into the hallway. My sister's room has slammed shut. Now, our hallway has no opening windows, and there wasn't any sort of draft. Even if there was, that bang sounded forceful. A little on edge, I open her door and see the doll has fallen face forward, even though I left it sitting upright. I thought it was weird, but brought the doll back into my room and moved on. That night I'm sleeping normally in my parents' room. I have to sleep in there while my parents are away because I need to keep an eye on my dog, and she refuses to sleep anywhere else. I wake up suddenly in the night, which is odd. I usually sleep all the way through the night. I check the time and see it's around 3 a.m. This immediately freaks me out, because I read that it's the witching hour. I glanced over at my dog, and she's awake too with her head up. Also strange. I put on my little puppy voice and ask my dog if she needs to pee, but she just stares back at me, then looks to the closet. I look at the closet too and see that it's open, even though I remember shutting it before going to bed. I quickly turn on the lamp and get out of bed to close the door. I don't even bother looking inside. My teenage brain still thinks a ghost is more likely than an intruder. So I get back into bed, scroll on my phone a bit until I fall asleep. I wake up the next morning, as usual, to feed my dog. But when I go out into the hall, I see my bedroom door is open. I always close my door when I am not in it. Now it's still dark out because I have to feed my dog around 6 a.m, or she throws a fit. I look inside my room, turn on the light, and the doll is on the floor. I left it on my bed. I remembered last night. And now I'm feeling paranoid. But again, I just put the doll back on my bed and leave, deciding to just have my door open. After feeding my dog, I went back to bed to sleep a couple of extra hours. That's when the most frightening thing happened. I was woken up by a loud banging sound, loud enough to wake me up, the heaviest sleeper in my family. I quickly got up and ran downstairs, my first thought being maybe my nana had fallen in the basement and was banging for me to help her. But when I got downstairs, I realized the banging was coming from my balcony door. I saw the glass shaking, as if something was hitting it from outside. The banging was so loud it was shaking the counters. The strangest part is that my dog was just standing in front of the door, staring at it. And she is the type of dog who will start barking if a mouse farts. I'm really shaken up at this point. It's completely still outside. No wind at all. I text my parents and tell them what's going on. As soon as I do, the banging stops. They tell me it's probably nothing and not to worry about it. I went downstairs to see my nana, but she had no idea about what happened. She's almost completely deaf, so couldn't hear it. She can't even walk up the stairs, so there was no way of her causing any of this. That was the last weird incident that happened. The next week my parents got back. I didn't tell them everything that happened because I didn't want them to think I'm a chicken or something. Needless to say, I moved the doll out of my room until my dad brought it back to his golf team. Nothing strange happened after that. I still have no idea what went on during those couple of days, but it certainly was strange. I sort of wonder the story behind the doll now, but I don't really know if I want to ask my dad. Update. I asked my dad if anyone else had occurrences, and he told me no one else actually takes the doll into their house. It just stays with their golf stuff. He said one heard some weird noises, but that's all I found out. I'll start by saying I personally did not witness or experience this, but the story comes from a close family friend whom I consider reputable and honest. I'm rather a skeptic when it comes to most paranormal activity, but I believe this story because of the man who told it. So as a little bit of background, my father was a police officer for 25 years through the 80s and 90s. His best friends were mostly officers, so growing up I always met and was around cops. Some of my father's cop friends were annoying and rude, and some were really squared away nice guys. One in particular was my favourite. I won't use his real name, so I'll just refer to him as Bob. Bob was one of my father's closest friends and beat partner for a long time. He was an older African American man from New Orleans. He was polite, had great mannerisms, and carried himself confidently. My father used to say he was the most honest cop he ever worked with and had solid integrity and bravery. One night my father and him worked an off-duty job at a local event, some sort of carnival or fair, I can't remember exactly. But there was a clown there. My father told me the entire night Bob was acting strange, acting uncomfortable, quiet and shy. When my father asked him what was wrong, Bob said, "I just hate clowns. Always have." My father started poking fun at him for being scared of the clown, and he said Bob just stared at him with this look that he had never seen him do before, like he was genuinely afraid. So my father asked why, and this is Bob's story. Bob grew up in New Orleans. When he was a child, his mum took him to stay at his aunt's house for a few weeks. Bob said he didn't care much for his aunt. She wasn't mean to him, but he always got a strange vibe when around her, like she carried an evil aura around with her. His family used to joke that his aunt was involved in voodoo and black magic, but they mostly just said these things in jest. His time at his aunt's was largely uneventful, with the exception of a strange rule she had. He was not allowed in the kitchen. Bob didn't understand why, but he followed it. On some nights, Bob claimed he heard his aunt talking to people in the kitchen at odd hours. In the mornings, he would question his aunt if she had friends over, and she would say she didn't. His aunt had a thing for dolls. She had them all around the house. He hated them. He said whenever he passed by the cabinets displaying them, he always felt he was being watched. But she had one doll she always carried around and protected like a treasure. You guessed it, a clown doll. He said his aunt loved this thing. Always took it with her around the house, caring for it as if it was a child. He didn't understand why. It was ugly and horrible looking, and he was frightened by that one the most. One night he said he smelt his aunt baking something sweet and conversing with someone. He got excited and ran into the kitchen without thinking about his aunt's rule. When he ran in, he saw on the counter the clown doll, moving its mouth and speaking to his aunt in a man's voice. The clown turned its head and looked at Bob. His aunt turned around frantically and scolded him out of the kitchen. He said as his aunt rushed him out of the kitchen, he heard the clown doll laughing. After that night, he never left his room and barely slept. His aunt claimed he was imagining seeing the clown talk. He never went back after that incident. My father, who is a big-time paranormal skeptic, believes Bob. He said he'd never seen Bob's eyes or body language display so much discomfort and fear. He looked at my dad square in the eyes and said,
"I know what I saw, and I know how it sounds, but I'm telling you, it happened. That doll was alive."
Whether you choose to believe it or not, I do. Because I know Bob, and he's just not the kind of guy to make up something or claim something he wasn't sure about. Hope you enjoyed. When I was about 7, my aunt gave both me and my sister really nice dolls. They were like infant-sized. My sister's doll had blonde curly hair tied up, blue eyes and a white dress with different coloured hearts. Well, she was scared of it. I think dolls just freaked her out in general. So my grandma kept it and for some reason hung it on her wall. I've always wondered why she did that. I never got to ask her, so if anyone knows why some people do that. She really just hung the doll by the dress with a nail above her bed. I just thought it was something to do with a Mexican superstition. It wasn't like she had a ton of dolls everywhere either. It was just this one doll. Well, we all had to sleep with it just hanging there because it was a one-bedroom house. Then, within a couple of days, we all started having nightmares about the doll trying to kill or harm us. My sister and I slept on the floor, and she woke me up and said the doll was calling my name. Not hers, mine. I told her to shut up because I thought she was trying to scare me. And then she started crying and said, "No, I'm serious, please." I drowned her out and fell back asleep. I had a dream that I was alone in my school cafeteria, and a little girl was singing the ABCs, and I just knew she was under the vending machine. I walked to it, and then my ankle got sliced when I got to the vending machine. I fell and couldn't walk. Our cafeteria had a stage and I looked up to see she, the doll, was peeking her head through the curtain laughing at me. Then I woke up. Another day, I overheard my mum and aunt talking about their dreams they had of the doll, and they all included just them and me. Like I was the only one including themselves that was in the dream. My mum said she and I were running from the house, that we both jumped in the car and she saw the shadow of the doll next to the car window. That I kept telling her to let the doll in and she wouldn't, so I started biting her. Then my aunt said the doll and I were sitting on the couch and I was acting and dressed weird. She said I was dressed like in old-time little girl's clothes, and that when I talked, she never saw my mouth move, but the doll was talking in my voice. She had a bad vibe, and once we realized that she felt a bad vibe, we attacked her. As for my grandma, she refused to take the doll down. I kept having nightmares of the doll, and so did everyone else. Then finally, like anyone else would do, I took the doll and took its eyes out, because I thought if she couldn't see us anymore, it would stop. I put the doll back up, and my family was horrified. I did not want an ass whipping, so of course, I didn't come forward and say it was me. My family was sure the doll was cursed, and blessed the house. The doll was gone the next trash day. For a week straight, my grandma prayed to us in Spanish and threw holy water the moment you walked through the door. Then one day, me and my sister were playing and she's like, "You have to be happy now because Grandma's doll wanted you sad." And all I told her was to shut up. Hello watchers and listeners. If you enjoyed that video, please hit the like button, and if you haven't already, consider subscribing. A huge thank you to all the Reddit users who allowed me to use their stories. Links to each story will be in the description below. If you have any stories you would like to share on my channel, please send them to my email, which is also in the description below. As always, a huge thank you to everyone who continues to support me. I really do appreciate it. Stay safe.